Well, what's something a stranger said that you still think about today? Elevators are already unsettling. Tiny boxes hanging by cables, sealed off from the world. I was in an old apartment building in Manhattan, heading up to visit a friend. The elevator was creaky, the kind that rattles and groans with every floor. I stepped inside and hit the button for the 9th floor. Just as the doors were about to close, a man slipped in. Middle-aged, rumpled suit, briefcase. He didn't press a button. Just stood there, too close, not looking at me. The elevator jolted upward. I kept my eyes on the glowing floor numbers, willing the ride to end. Halfway up, the man spoke, voice low and flat. "You should always stand near the door, easier to escape." I blinked, not sure I heard him right. He turned slightly, finally meeting my eyes. Sometimes people get stuck, and sometimes they don't come back out. I swallowed hard, shifted closer to the door. The elevator creaked, shuddered. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Stuck between floors, no way out, trapped with a stranger who spoke like he knew things he shouldn't. When we reached the 9th floor, I bolted out. The man didn't move, just stayed inside as the doors closed, staring. I took the stairs down after that, and to this day, I never ride an elevator without standing right by the door. Naples during the day is a whirlwind, loud, chaotic, full of life. At night, it's a different city. I was wandering late, too jet-lagged to sleep, when I stumbled on a small cafe tucked away in a narrow alley. The lights were on, the door stood open. But inside, it was empty. No customers, no staff. Curious and a little desperate for coffee, I stepped inside. After a moment, a man appeared from the back, thin, pale, wearing an apron that looked more like a funeral shroud. He didn't smile, just stared. "You're here late," he said in accented English. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, forcing a smile. He nodded slowly. "Bad dreams come to those who wander at night," he said, voice low. I laughed awkwardly, trying to brush it off. He didn't laugh. "The city is different after midnight. It remembers things it shouldn't." I backed toward the door, suddenly very aware of the empty chairs, the silent coffee machines, the way the shadows seemed thicker near the walls. "Best you go," he said, "before it notices you." I left. Fast. I never found that cafe again. Not in the morning, not days later when I retraced my steps. Sometimes the city forgets you. Sometimes it doesn't. Marrakesh is a city of noise and color and life, and sometimes shadows. I was wandering the Medina, lost among the labyrinth of stalls selling spices and rugs and trinkets. The air was thick with the scent of mint tea and grilled meat. That's when an old woman grabbed my arm, tiny, hunched, her face a map of wrinkles. She wore layers of faded cloth and heavy bracelets that clinked as she moved. "I will tell your future," she said in French-accented English. I tried to shake her off, polite but firm. She tightened her grip. "You will be lost," she said, voice low and urgent. "Lost where no one can find you." I laughed nervously. "Thanks, but I'm good." She stared at me, eyes dark and unreadable. "When the ground opens, don't look down." I pulled free and hurried away, heart pounding harder than it should have been. I told myself it was nothing, just a scam, a trick to get money from tourists. But later, as I was hiking through the rocky cliffs outside the city, I stumbled, and the ground gave way. A sinkhole, sudden and gaping, right in front of me. I didn't fall. I didn't look down. I backed away, legs shaking, mind flashing back to her words. Coincidence, maybe, but sometimes warnings come from the strangest mouths, and sometimes it's smarter to listen. Bridges make you feel small, especially at night. I was driving through rural Oregon late one evening, trying to make it to a motel before midnight. The road twisted through dark forests and empty fields, and the only real landmark was an old iron bridge over a river, narrow, creaking under the weight of passing cars. As I approached the bridge, I saw a figure standing by the side of the road, a man, tall and thin, wearing a heavy coat despite the mild weather. He stepped closer to the road as I slowed down to cross, raising one hand in a lazy wave. I slowed, rolled the window down halfway, heart thudding. "You don't want to cross," he said, voice low, almost conversational. "Why not?" I asked, gripping the steering wheel tighter. He shrugged. "They're waiting in the water tonight." I didn't wait for more. I rolled the window up, hit the gas, and sped across the bridge, metal groaning under my tires. Nothing happened. No sudden shadows. No ghostly hands reaching up. But when I glanced in the rearview mirror, the man was gone. And the bridge behind me? Shrouded in mist that hadn't been there before. It was raining. A relentless, cold drizzle that blurred the city lights and soaked through every layer of clothing. I was leaving a pub, tired and a little buzzed, when I called for a rideshare. A car pulled up, dark sedan, exactly what the app said. I got in without thinking, shivering as the heater blasted warm air. "Name?" the driver asked. I gave it. He nodded and pulled into traffic. But something felt wrong. No friendly chatter, no music. The windows were tinted too dark. The driver kept glancing at me in the mirror, expressionless. We drove in silence for a few minutes, the city giving way to quieter, darker streets. Not the route home. Where are we going?" I asked. No answer. Just a slow, unsettling smile in the mirror. My phone buzzed. A message from the app. "Your driver is arriving now." Panic hit me like ice water. I wasn't in my ride. I reached for the door handle. It was locked. The driver chuckled, low, gutturals, and said, "You really shouldn't get into cars with strangers." I didn't think. I slammed my shoulder against the door. Once, twice, and on the third try, it popped open. I tumbled out onto the wet street, scraping my palms, heart hammering. The car sped off into the night. I sat there in the rain, trembling, watching the taillights vanish. I never found out who he was or what might have happened if I hadn't gotten out. City streets are loud during the day, but at night, they turn into something else. I was waiting at a nearly deserted bus stop in Cape Town, the kind where the streetlights flicker and the silence feels heavy. An older woman sat a few benches down, bundled in a faded coat, her belongings in plastic bags at her feet. I checked my watch, impatient. The bus was late. She spoke without looking at me. "You won't make it home tonight." I stared at her, unsure if she was talking to me. "The shadows are watching," she added, voice so soft I had to strain to hear it. I glanced around. Empty streets. Nothing but the occasional car hissing by on wet asphalt. I considered moving to another stop. Walking. Anything. Then she turned her head, and her eyes, milky, cataract-clouded, locked onto mine. "Best you start running," she whispered. I didn't wait. I sprinted down the street, heart in my throat, not daring to look back. I never saw her again. Was she crazy? High? Some urban prophet no one believed? I don't know. But I never waited at that bus stop again. And I still wonder what would have happened if I had stayed. Moscow's subway is beautiful. Marble columns, chandeliers, grand halls underground. But late at night, it turns into something else. I was on the last train, the final ride before the system shut down for the night. The carriage was almost empty except for a few silent, weary passengers. At one stop, an old woman boarded, bundled in layers of mismatched clothing, her gray hair escaping from under a knit cap. She shuffled down the aisle and sat across from me. I barely glanced up, just enough to catch her staring at me. Not glaring, just staring. Unnerved, I looked away, focused on my phone, counting the stops. The train rocked and screeched along the tracks. At the next station, more people got off, leaving the carriage emptier and emptier. Now it was just me and her. She leaned forward slowly, painfully, as if dragging her body against some invisible weight. And then she whispered, "They see you, you know." I froze, pretended not to hear. She leaned closer. "Even when you sleep, especially then." I stood up, heart racing, and moved to the next carriage. She didn't follow. When I got off at my stop, I glanced back through the window. She was still there, watching me, a faint smile on her lips. I didn't sleep that night, and for weeks after, every time I closed my eyes, I imagined unseen eyes staring back at me from the dark. The woods are quiet in the north. Too quiet. I was hiking solo through the forests of Swedish Lapland. Crisp air, endless pines, a sky so big it made you feel small. I'd been alone for 2 days, only passing the occasional hiker far in the distance. Late one afternoon, as the sun dipped low, I came across a man sitting on a fallen tree. He wore an old parka, boots caked in mud, face weathered and unreadable. "Lost?" he asked in English, voice dry as paper. "No," I said, "just passing through." He nodded, as if he already knew. Then he said, You shouldn't walk alone here, not with the old ones awake. I frowned. Old ones? He smiled, a slow, joyless stretch of thin lips. They don't like strangers in their woods. I forced a laugh, kept walking, feeling his eyes on my back the entire time. That night, camped under a thin canopy of trees, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every snap of a twig, every whisper of wind felt like a breath at my neck. I cut my trip short the next morning. Maybe he was just a crazy old man. Or maybe, maybe, the old ones don't like strangers. Deserts are quiet, too quiet sometimes. I was on a solo road trip through Arizona, the kind of trip you take to clear your head when life feels too heavy. Endless highways, red dust, a sun so relentless it seemed to bleach your thoughts clean. I was low on gas, dangerously low, when I spotted a tiny, decrepit gas station, the kind you only see in horror movies and bad dreams. Rusted pumps, flaking paint, not a soul in sight. I pulled up, heart hammering, half expecting the pump not to work. It did. Slow, but steady. As I leaned against the car, wiping sweat from my forehead, a man appeared from around the side of the building. Old, weathered, dusty jeans, wide-brimmed hat. His skin looked like leather left too long in the sun. He said nothing at first, just watched me. I pretended not to notice, focusing on the pump's numbers creeping up. Finally, he spoke, voice low and rough. "You should turn around." I forced a laugh. "Just passing through." He shook his head slowly. "Some places don't want you passing through." The pump clicked, signaling full. I yanked it out, slammed the gas cap shut, shoved a 20 into his outstretched hand. As I got back into the car, he leaned closer, just enough for me to hear as I slammed the door. "They're not gonna let you leave." I peeled out of there, gravel kicking up behind me, heart thudding like a drum. Nothing happened on the road that night. No strange lights, no breakdowns, no ominous figures in the rearview mirror. But even now, years later, sometimes in the middle of the night, I think about that man and wonder what he meant by they.